Hello everyone, this is Hakaym and welcome back to some more World of Warships, and today we are taking out the Tier 7 British battleship, the King George V, or KGV for short. We are playing on estuaries, and we actually have a good matchmaking for the ship. We have a King George on our side, we have a Bayern, Fuso, Texas, Konig, Pensacola, Belfast, Alba, Emile Bertin, Königsberg, Moss, Minikaze. On the enemy team there is a Scharnhorst, Queen Elizabeth, Fuso, New York, Iron Duke, Pensacola, Shores, Cleveland, Leander, Emile Bertin, Shiratsu, and a Mutsuki. Now, I have to say, for the obvious reasons, I've heard a lot of flack on the ship. And for the few battles that I've actually got to play with her, and this was actually my very first battle. I know many people may not like this, but it was a decent battle, and it's a good demonstration on as far as what to expect when you first get the ship. The King George V is actually pretty good. I enjoyed her. I've had, like I said, a few battles under my belt with her, and I've enjoyed my time with her. If anything, I would have to say I would play her very, very similar to the Scharnhorst in a lot of ways. Now, obviously, the main thing you should be noticing is the very unusual turret setup. You have 4 turrets in the back, and then you have 6 turrets in the front. So very unusual in that aspect, and I can see how that could possibly potentially be an annoyance, especially if you need to, say, you fire another shot and you only fire 2 shells. It's a few things. Now, the HE and the reload rate, I should actually point out the reload rate. It's insanely good. 25 seconds. And if you have, say, adrenaline rush on the King George on your captain, that could drop it down even further. So very, very similar to how the Scharnhorst plays. So first level was unfortunately a miss. The Scharnhorst pulled in, and unfortunately we did not get a hit. Now the Moss did lay down a smoke screen, and unfortunately we're not able to actually really see. So I do go ahead and pop my own spotter plane to at least possibly see if we can see someone, and we are now officially detected by the enemy team. And just look at that number climbing up. 5 ships aiming at us. Now the AP is probably something I should point out. The AP is, well, I'd say it's finicky. It's good and it cannot be so good. So at a distance, your AP loses a lot of its penetration value, and most times the only time you really want to be using your AP is when you're around 12 kilometers, so you definitely need to be aware of that situation. And we do go ahead and use this island because, as you can see, the enemy team, well, they're kind of lemming training onto the western side, and our few battleships that are making their way over here are taking their sweet time. And I will have to say, the belt armor on the ship is decent, but you can see how I'm angling my ship. I am angling it away. This is actually probably, as far as I can tell, a really good way to do. And look at that. Look at that. Nice. Just took out the enemy shores. So very first kill. That was with AP, obviously. And I'm going to be testing out both the AP and the HE. Now, the HE is definitely a lot better than the King George V. And in the fact that it has a much higher fire chance and damage. AP is decent. We got 2 penetrations, 1 over penetration there. Did about 7,000, so not too bad. I was hoping for a Citadel on that Pensacola, but he was kind of pushed aside by the enemy Scharnhorst. Now, I am going to be using AP a lot at the very beginning of this battle, because the King George, the KGV, it's a really good cruiser killer, and really comes down to the fact that the AP can Citadel most of the cruisers, and you have a good low detection. So you want to use that to your most benefit whenever possible. Now, let's see. We're going to actually pull away, and this is the good thing about the KGV is her low detection, because you can see we are eating damage, but we're able to pull away, and we can actually speed away. Her speed is actually fairly decent. So do have to be careful, but yeah, I'm going to disengage here because there are quite a few ships. Now, one negative thing, as I definitely do not like about this ship, is her rudder shift time is very, very, very sluggish, and this Scharnhorst is very surprised that I'm not using HE. Well, yeah, the HE, once again, the HE is really good. Does around 6,100 points of damage, has a 41% fire chance. So whenever possible, if you need to, use your HE. Your HE is actually really, really good. And your AP, let's see, fired a salvo, fired a back turret at the Scharnhorst, and we get a bounce. Great. Alright. Actually, I don't even know how that would have bounced, but apparently the game decided to say, nope, no penetration. We're gonna ricochet a shell off that Scharnhorst that is fairly broadside. So, let's see. Now, we are in a good position. The enemy team, well, this Scharnhorst is actually doing a really good job as far as taking care of any enemy ships. Just took out our friendly Minakaze, but the enemy team is down 2 ships, and they are essentially losing the eastern side front. Now, the western side front is not really pushing. I believe the Queen Elizabeth and I believe this New York are going to be the ones that make it the furthest south. The Scharnhorst is now coming into a situation of a enemy Belfast, who is obviously going to just melt him down with HE. So, yeah, I will have to say, like I said, the KGV is good. I've had really good time. Now here, obviously, having HE would be a much better ammo type, but we still get actually about 4,000 points of damage, and that was going through the deck armor of the Scharnhorst, so overall not too bad. Now I am showing a lot of broadside, but the belt armor on the KGV is actually fairly decent. Now granted, the Scharnhorst does have smaller caliber guns than any of the other tier 7s, but still overall not too bad. There we go, just got our very first fire game, and now we're gonna use our HE for a little while. And we're gonna once again pull away. I do want to pull away from the Scharnhorst just in case of torpedoes, but it looks like he just ate some of his well, some from the same country. The Moss just took out the enemy Fuso. Good lord, I can read apparently. The enemy Scharnhorst just went down by the Moss's torpedoes. So I have to give props to the Moss. The Moss was actually being a really good destroyer, offering smoke screens and also dropping torps. Now, once again, one really negative thing I don't like about the KGV is that rudder shift time. It is a lousy 21 seconds. It's very, very slow to get turn, but with that, we can actually have good speed, around 26 knots in a straight line, and yep, we're going to begin burning pretty much any battleship that we can actually land shots on. So this is probably a good example. Long range, it's probably better just to fire HE, essentially due to the fact that your armor piercing does lose some of its penetration value at long range, and just better off just using that HE and causing fires. Now you do have 6 guns in the front, and we just earned another fire on the Queen Elizabeth. And looks like he is still going to allow it to burn. Now we are attracting the attention of 2 of these enemy team battleships. 2 of the enemy battleships, good lord. My mouth does not want to work with me today. But as far as dispersion, not too bad. Granted, right there, that was quite crappy. Went all the way around. So yeah, it's battleship dispersion. Sigma value is fairly up there. I believe it's possibly around the Colorado. I don't know the exact value on that Sigma. And this is supposed to be what is to be expected with British battleships. And yeah, we're going to be using this HE for a while, and it does, once again, does a really good job in a lot of ways. Now, taking a little step backwards, let's talk about the AA suite. I know, unfortunately, we don't actually see a CV. Now, the AA on the KGV is actually, once again, really good. Well, it's decent. It's comparable to the Colorado in a lot of ways. Mid-range AA is probably what it's better suited for. So a lot of dive bombers coming in. It's going to eat... Well, they're going to take a lot of damage, lose a lot of planes, but unfortunately long-range AA is not the greatest in the world. Iron Duke is showing a lot of broadside. Do have AP loaded, and there we go. Not too bad. Second kill of the game, and we are sitting quite comfortably at around 90k. Now, we do have an enemy Cleveland. Well, he really doesn't like us. He is currently sitting behind an island, trying to offer additional HE fire whenever possible, but he's going to be in a very difficult situation. Now, that's actually a really good example right there. You saw there we actually caused one of the turrets to break, and this is what you can do. This is what I would recommend, at least with the KGV, is don't aim for that bow. Aim for more around that turret armor. Pretty certain it does a little bit better. See, you can see we get a ricochet right there. There was no penetration, no overmatching the bow armor. And essentially, I'm just gonna let the Texas take out the New York, because there is that enemy Cleveland. Now, unfortunately for us, the enemy Cleveland is going to become too much angled, and the AP on this is not going to prove that beneficial. But we do earn Confederate, so that is actually really good. But we are over pinning this Cleveland multiple times, and here in a moment the angle is going to be too much that our armor AP rounds are not going to be able to penetrate. Now, granted, I was aiming a bit high right here and do get a lot in the way of over penetrations. I think I was trying to compensate for the fact that he is reversing at an angle. So yeah, I make mistakes sometimes. So all right, Cleveland's gonna reverse, but as you can see, the enemy team is losing their cap, and they do have one pesky little destroyer in at our cap, but he is being currently hunted down by friendly Belfast, and that's not going to be a good time for him. So yeah, Musuke actually goes down to the friendly Alba, so props to you, good job. All right, so that's all taken care of, and I guess this is rare opportunities of our AA actually going off. So overall, as far as my thoughts on KGV, as we open up on this Fuso, the Fuso is going to start turning away, so unfortunately we're not going to get a lot of AP penetrations on him. Get a ricochet, good lord. But I definitely want to kill this Cleveland, but the Cleveland is, well, he's in a very bad situation right now. Should go down here in a moment. I believe the Fuso, or I believe the Bayern is going to take him out, maybe even the Belfast. But anyways, yes, there we go. Bayern takes out the Cleveland with a fire. Looks like he was using HE and low health. Oh, so close. Was hoping to get a kill on that Queen Elizabeth. That was the same Queen Elizabeth we saw earlier in this match. But unfortunately, he does go down, and well, the enemy team's not doing so hot right now. All that's left is the enemy Fuso and the Shiratsu, and I go ahead and pop my own spotter plane, not for the sake of distance, but for the sake that there is a enemy Shiratsu right in front of me, and I really don't want to eat any torpedoes. So at an angle, look at that, we even damaged one of his guns. Very nice. Shiratsu is finally spotted, but is going to go down in a hail of fire. Yep, friendly Fuso does take him out, and finally got rid of that freaking plane that was flying above us. Now Fuso is going to go down quite quickly, and as far as very first game, and this is something you really have to take into account, whenever you get a new ship, it's a big learning experience because there's a lot of minute aspects you have to learn about the ship, and the Fuso is going to go down any moment now. Right, there we go. So our team earned a victory. We brought home 269,841 silver, 8,627 XP. We earned Confederate and First Blood. We did 121,865 points of damage. So overall, not a bad game. 72 shell hits, 1 plane shot down, 2 kills, 5 fires, 1 citadel, and 4 secondary hits. We were top of the team with a base XP of 1,620. As far as damage, it was pretty much across the board. There was not one ship that we focused too heavily on. The most amount of damage was the Queen Elizabeth with 30,740. Our HE shells did around 20,000 points of damage, but our AP did around 73,000 points of damage, while our fires did around 27,000. So overall, not a bad game. Definitely has made a good impression on me, but we will see how it fares. And probably one little side note I should mention is especially how she fares against upper tiers. Now, upper tiers, it can get a little insane because your armor is decent, but it's not the greatest thing in the world. You will probably be eating some citadels from, say, Iowas and Ismos. You really got to be careful, and you got to play it kind of like a battle cruiser. Very similar once again to how the Scharnhorst plays. So if anything, HE is going to be your best friend, fires are going to be your best friend, and being surrounded by your teammates, offering support and getting support from your teammates is going to ensure that you will stay alive a lot longer and deal more damage. So upper tiers, yes, obviously is going to be extremely difficult, but with that good fire chance, you do have a decent potential. So anyways, let's quickly hop into the port and take a look at the stats. See you there. Alright everyone, welcome back to the port, and I have to say, the King George V, or the KGV, definitely has made a good impression on me, at least for the few battles that I've had her. So, very first impression, I've enjoyed her. I've actually had a good opportunity with her. If anything, I would say she's very similar to the Scharnhorst in a lot of ways. Probably should be played like the Scharnhorst in a lot of ways. The only thing is that you do not have torpedoes or the really fantastic secondaries that the Scharnhorst can have. However, as far as the guns are concerned, very similar to the Scharnhorst. But let's actually take a look at the stats and go from there. So hit points 53,900, and let's actually pull up our tier 7s that I do have. So like I said, the Scharnhorst is probably a very good comparison, and as I should also point out, the King George V I am showing right now is the stock version, and this is what is to be expected. So the Scharnhorst obviously has 3,000 more points as compared to a stock version of the KGV. Armor layout, it's not too bad. It does have a decent, at least casement armor. Has decent armor belt, around 381. Citadel sits fairly below the water. Let's actually kind of remove it. Citadel torpedo bulkhead is around 44 millimeters. The Warship is only 51. So I have had a Queen Elizabeth actually citadel me from the front, going through the bow into the Citadel Warship. So you do have to be aware of that. But for the most case, getting citadeled is going to be a little bit difficult when being hit from other battleships. So there is that. There is a lot of superstructure. So you are probably going to eat a lot of HE damage and a lot of fire damage. You're going to be on fire quite a bit. So do be well aware of that. You just need to be kind of careful. And that's the good thing about the KGV. She's actually fairly good at getting out of bad situations. But we'll talk about that in a second. Torpedo protection is quite low, 24%. Scharnhorst has also 24%. So if you've played the Scharnhorst and you know how she deals with torpedoes, it's not quite good. It's not the best situation. So do try to avoid torpedoes whenever possible. Moving on to artillery, she has Actually a unique setup. She has, first of all, one dual 356 millimeters. Compared to all the other tier 7s, most of them have around 381 millimeters. So once again, very, very similar to the Scharnhorst caliber guns. And then you have two quad turrets. So this essentially is where most of your shells are going to be coming from. They have a 25-second reload time, very, very low for tier 7. 36-second on the turn time of the guns. Max dispersion is 209 meters. Max HE damage, and this is something that once again is very, very similar to the Scharnhorst in a lot of ways. HE damage is really fantastic against battleships. 6,100. Doesn't have the division where you have to divide it by 6. Has better HE penetration. Chance of fire is 41%, which is really phenomenal. Now, the AP is unique, so she's really good at Citadel and cruisers, and that's where you should be primarily focusing your AP is on cruisers whenever they show you broadside, because she can and will Citadel cruisers quite readily, which is very, very similar to how the Scharnhorst plays, where you would use HE against other battleships and use your AP against cruisers. So with that, she's actually really, really good. Now, at long range, and the range on these guns is 16.5 kilometers, and the AP damage is 10,500. Long range, the penetration value drops off, but if you get around the magic number of 12 kilometers, your AP will actually do a fairly substantial amount of damage against any broadside battleship. You may not get a Citadel, but at least you can do fairly good penetration damage, which is very beneficial, especially if that battleship is already on fire and might as well cause even more damage. The velocity on the shells is slow, 757 meters per second, a little bit better than the Queen Elizabeth. And as far as dispersion, I feel like it's better, but maybe that's just me. Maybe RNGesus was a little bit nicer to me, but overall it does feel a little bit better. Moving on to secondary guns, you have 8 dual 134 millimeters. They have a 6.7 second reload time. Max HE damage is 1900 with a 8% fire chance and a 5.3 kilometer range. Not, once again, definitely not comparable to the Scharnhorst, but at least they're there, and at least they can assist if something gets a little bit too close. Now the AA is pretty good. Keep in mind this is stock, so your AA will be improved once you get the B hull, but even right now it's pretty good, especially your mid-range AA is probably going to be your best. Your long range is going to be your weaker one. You have 18 single 20 millimeters. They will do an average damage of 65 with a 2 kilometer range. Then you have 3 quad 40 millimeters. Average damage is 39 with a 2.5 kilometer range. And here's the really nice ones. 5 octo 40 millimeters. Average damage is 99 with a 2.5 kilometer range. And then your secondaries also offer additional AA. Average damage is 65 with a 4.5 kilometer range. So your AA is not too bad and could definitely be buffed once again with AFT, BFT, or even a module. Moving on to maneuverability, she's actually pretty quick, and it feels really nice coming from the Queen Elizabeth to this. Max speed is 26.6 knots. Turning circle radius is kind of big, but she's definitely a lot bigger. She's very, very wide. Keep in mind, she's a very wide ship. So turning circle radius is 790 meters, so you gotta provide her a lot of room just to get turned around. Now here's one really negative thing I don't like about her. Rudder ship time is 21 seconds. 21 seconds. It is ridiculously slow to get your rudder to turn. And it won't get better until you do get the B hull. That will drop it down to around 16 or 15 seconds, something like that. Do have to be careful. You really can't make those very quick turns, so be well aware of the situation. And that's the good thing about this ship, is her concealment and her maneuverability. Concealment is 12.2 kilometers, the best in tier compared to all the other battleships. 12.2. So it allows you to be very, very stealthy, allows you to get in and possibly surprise a few cruisers that are not actually going to be, well, going to be aware that there is a British battleship showing up. And it also allows you to disengage, and that's a nice thing about her concealment and her speed, is if you need to disengage, and you probably will, you can actually pull away. You have decent speed and you have a good concealment, so you're able to pull away if needs be. Now the detectability range by air is 10.8, so definitely a little bit bigger than, say, the Queen Elizabeth's, but could be worse. Could be worse. Alright, so moving on to the modules. Nothing really has changed. The health pool, as far as how many points of health you get per second, is 323, a little bit better than the Queen Elizabeth, and it's active for 28 seconds. So you can repair quite a bit of damage, and that's something you definitely need to keep in mind, is if you need to pull away, you have a good health repair party. So definitely want to use that whenever possible. As far as my Captain Jack Dunkirk, not a lot has changed since you saw him on the Queen Elizabeth. Still working on getting this captain ranked up. I am throwing flags and camo on my ships just to get him all the way up, because it'd be nice having a 19-point captain on, say, a tier 8 or so. But anyways, this is actually going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like what you saw, hit the like and subscribe button. You guys have a great and fantastic day. Zaijian.